On May 16th, the Department of Transportation and Communication issued the implementing rules and regulations of RA 10586 or the Anti-Drunk and Drug Driving Act of 2013, which will take effect this month. The Anti-Drunk and Drug Driving Act recognizes the protection of life and property and ensures road safety through the observance of drivers' responsible and ethical driving standards, and shall therefore penalize the acts of driving under the influence of alcohol, dangerous drugs, and the other intoxicating substances.
Kailangan may probable cause ka. Ibig sabihin, kahit walang violation, kung tingin mo, mukhang lasing. Kasi iba yung driver behavior, yung sudden stopping, yung swerving, mga ganon. May probable cause ka para ulihin siya. Yung second is may traffic violation ka, may initial violation ka na tinatawag. Kita mo yung driver na suspected of alcohol, mukhang may naamoy ka o may nakita kang mga bote ng alak dun sa loob ng sasakyan, you can test. Pag involved sa accident, mandatory ngayon na test agad ng alcohol.
Under the IRR, violators will face penalties ranging from 3 months to 20 years imprisonment and fines ranging from 20 to 500,000 pesos, as well as the revocation of their licenses. The IRR also provides protocols on how law enforcement officers can determine if a driver is driving under the influence, as well as the field sobriety test that will be given to them. With the implementation of the Anti-Drunk and Drug Driving Act's IRR, how will this solve the high incidences of traffic accidents in the country? Which Traffic and Transportation Office is the implementing agency of this new law? How will enforcers know for certain if a driver is driving under the influence, and what kind of sobriety test will be given to him?
Good evening. You're watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Tonight, we will be discussing your legal rights on the Anti-Drunk and Drug Driving Act and its recently released implementing rules and regulations. What you need to know as drivers in the hopes of convincing you to stop drinking and driving.
Our guest for tonight is Jason Salvador, spokesperson for the Land Transportation Office.
Yeah, good evening, Jason.
Jason.
Good evening, Sir Rod.
Thank you for
Good evening,
joining us.
Karen. It's
And,
a pleasure.
We know one thing for sure, you didn't come here with a bit of alcohol in your
Yes,
system.
I made sure of
Or
that.
we can test it right now.
We can test
Well,
it
we
right
can
now.
actually.
But this law has been going on. I mean, we've known about this law. This is about to come out.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends were talking about it. It's in the consciousness of people. So tell us about RA 10586.
Well, we're kind of glad that it's in the consciousness of our countrymen because the law has been passed last year. It took some time for the IRR to be crafted because we wanted to plug all the gray areas, all the loopholes. And finally, last May, it has been approved and it has been published. So effective June 1, the law is now
June 1.
in effect.
In effect now.
But the law gives us at least a month, and the IRR as well, to conduct a massive information dissemination campaign because we know how new the law is, and we want our countrymen to understand as much as possible what are the penalties and how do they detect.
And who
But
will
Jason,
implement
can
it?
you clarify? You mean, when you say 1 month to conduct a massive information campaign, does that mean that in the meantime, because the law came into effect June 1, if you're caught driving while drunk, can you then get arrested for that?
Well, for one, we don't have the equipment yet. We don't have the actual breath analyzers yet with our law enforcement officers. So that's the reason why we haven't been implementing it just yet. And we want to educate our countrymen as much as possible before we go into full implementation. So we are just reminding people of not to drink and drive, and that's it.
No, Jason, there seems to be this impression that prior to this law, there was no law on drunk driving or driving under the influence of drugs. Was there no law?
Well, actually, there is. It's a part of the Transportation Code or the Republic Act 4136, but it doesn't define driving under the influence, unlike this law, because it gives you the threshold on how to determine if you are driving DUI, so under the influence. So this law specifically defines that, as well as the fines and penalties.
And would the level of alcohol be determinative
Yes,
of
yes.
your penalties? For
Yes,
example?
it will determine if you are under the influence of alcohol. That's for sure. So that's why we have the breath analyzers, to make sure that you're under or above the prescribed threshold.
Can you give us the prescribed threshold? Because usually there's a difference among people. For some, they're only tipsy after, for instance, 5 shots of tequila. And then for other people, that's completely drunk already.
Right.
So can you give the viewers an
Well,
idea?
this has been why it took the IRR so long to be crafted, because we wanted to make sure that we have the right threshold for us Filipinos, Asians in particular, because as compared to Caucasians, we have a smaller body. So it's the alcohol consumption with our bodies is different. So we came across 0.05 as the threshold for private drivers, meaning if you are a driver driving private cars as big as SUVs, but if you are a public utility drivers and you are a private driver driving a truck or a bus or even a motorcycle, the threshold is 0.
Zero,
not a
meaning
drop
as
on
a
alcohol.
drop. Yeah, okay.
You're driving something that's like considered public transportation.
Right, public transportation and the ones that are considered more dangerous.
Zero tolerance yan.
Zero tolerance. Because if you're driving a truck, that's considered more dangerous. If you're driving a motorcycle, diba, it's more dangerous.
And then if it's private, it's 0.05, is that?
0.05%.
Now,
Yeah.
give us an idea. What is 0.05? Is that a beer?
Yeah.
Is that 2
Well,
beers? Is
I
that...
tested this myself. It's not an exact science, but it's something in between 2 light beers.
Two light beers
and 1 regular beer.
And a bottle of beer has 6%
Well,
alcohol
5%.
content.
Depends on what
5%?
beer you're...
Yes.
Depends on what beer.
Okay,
Yeah.
just to give viewers an idea, na parang if you have 2 light beers, that's the equivalent of having a full glass of wine,
Right,
right?
that's true.
So para they have a conversion rate here. What about if you're having whiskey, for instance? That's already, what,
That's
2
a lot
shots?
higher, yeah. Probably just 1 shot. But again, we need to remind our viewers here that this is not an exact science. A bottle of beer can make somebody tipsy, but to another person, it could take a lot more. So it's not an exact science. That's
so
why...
it takes into consideration the body size.
Yes,
So
and,
if
and
you're-
the alcohol consumption. I mean, the concentration in your blood. So what we advise people is that if you're gonna drive, just don't drink at all.
Now, here's the thing. You can't just be randomly stopped by the police and then they'll do a random check. There has to be probable cause
Yes.
that you're
Yes,
probably
yes,
drunk, right?
yes.
Now, can you explain that, those probable causes?
or
yes,
at least indicators,
yeah, indicators,
that
yeah.
Well-
according to the rules, you're allowed to be stopped.
Yes, you are allowed to be stopped given if you have initially you have a traffic violation. Okay, that's one probable cause. Or if the law enforcer sees that you're driving inconsistently. For example, you're over speeding, you're weaving in and out of traffic,
Swerving,
you're swerving, and then you're jerking. Something that might suspect that the law give suspicion that you're somewhat not in the right frame of mind.
Right.
So they can stop you for that.
Okay, once you're stopped, let's go through this step by step.
All
Once
right.
you're stopped, and they have that suspicion.
Yes.
That,
All right. First,
what
what
happens?
they need to inform the driver about the traffic violation, and then if the law enforcer detects somehow that he is under the influence of alcohol or drugs, then he needs to inform the driver.
Through ano lang, essentially, how he talks,
how he talks,
smells,
how he looks, how he smells. Now, if the law enforcer suspects that he is under the influence of liquor, he can ask him to get out of his car and then
Okay.
conduct the field sobriety test.
And can you give us the types of tests
Yeah,
that are
yeah,
allowed under
So,
the
yeah,
rules?
The
field sobriety
IRR,
test, yeah.
the IRR adopted the 3 most commonly used field sobriety tests. This is widely accepted and widely used in the international market. First is the horizontal gaze nystagmus, or what we call the eye test.
Nystagmus, yeah.
Yeah, this is wherein the driver will be asked to step outside, and then we will use a pen light or a ball pen that will be placed about a foot in front of the eyes of the driver, and then he needs to follow that without just using his eyes. So from the center to the side, and then to the center again, and to the side. The idea here is that scientifically it says that if you're not under any other influences, you're supposed to
Be able to
be able to follow this.
The light.
Yeah, the light or the ball pen without any jerking of your eyes. Because if you're under the influence, then it's going to be uncontrollably jerking before it reaches your horizontal
harder
gaze.
to, yes,
So that's
follow.
it.
That's the first.
Okay.
All
So
right.
that's the first
So
indication.
if you fail that,
If you fail that, then they'll ask you to do the walk and turn.
the walk and
Okay.
turn.
Okay,
Okay.
the
So,
walk and
Sounds like a model move.
okay, Karen,
Yes.
will you please demonstrate?
Well,
Yeah,
That's the model move or the catwalk move. Well, they'll ask you
We're gonna-
to walk 9 steps, heel to toe, meaning
The
like
foot
that in a
straight.
straight line. Yeah,
Okay.
9 steps forward, and then you come back, and then another 9 steps, heel to toe. Here, they try to measure your balance. And of
Okay.
course, we understand that if you're under the influence or if you're not in the right frame of mind, you're supposed to not to reduce
Yeah.
your balance, right?
Yeah.
But some say this is difficult because even
Yeah.
if you're not under
Even-
the influence
exactly.
of
yeah, there
anything,
might
that could be
people
hard.
who are poor in
Yeah,
coordination.
have vertigo
Yeah.
or
Vertigo.
something.
Well,
Yeah.
if you have vertigo, Sir Rod, you're not
Yeah.
supposed to drive.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Or
Well,
elderly
let's say you're
people.
just-
Elderly people.
Elderly
have a hard
people, or
time
if you
also.
just exercise and you know your legs are tired.
I know some people. I mean,
Well,
it's
it's hard.
difficult also to be even if you're sober. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried it, and
So
it's
if you
not really
fail,
that easy.
so no, not a specific test. Like if you undergo the eye horizontal test and
Stigma,
then
yeah.
the walk and turn test.
Walk and turn.
If you fail both, it's still not conclusive. What
yes,
other
yes.
tests?
Well, there's one more. That it's what we call the one-leg stand.
One leg stand, okay.
They'll ask you to stand. You raise your one of your feet, and then up for about 6 inches for 30 seconds.
Okay.
Either the left or the right. Again,
Not that easy. Right?
again, that's
Another
not easy.
difficult
Especially if you're, I guess, you know, had a long day.
You had a long day, you exercised, you played badminton.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of us really don't have balance to begin with.
Right, right.
So it's not really that conclusive. That's why if you fail any of those tests, we move to the breath analyzer.
So it's 3.
Okay.
You have to go through the 3,
Go to
Yeah.
the 3.
and then
Now,
you go to the breath.
After, I'm
breath.
going to ask Jason to show us how to conduct the breath analyzer test. But for
Okay.
now, we'll have
Yeah.
to take a short break. Legal Help Desk will return after these messages.
Okay, dito siya.
You're still watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News Channel with our guest, Jason Salvador, spokesperson of the LTO.
And we are here. Are we going to
Yeah.
test the breathalyzer? Well,
Yeah, I brought the sample. This is not the
Yeah.
actual breath because we're about to procure it. But this is one of the police grade breath analyzers that we have on the market. So when I say police grade, because there are a lot of breath analyzers out there. In fact, they have ones for just home use, for office use.
I actually won one. I
You won
attended
one?
an event and I won, like it's a small gadget that
Yeah.
actually looks like a keychain because you can attach it to something, but it's small, but it's supposed to test your
Yeah,
alcohol level.
so that you can test yourself.
Yeah, in other countries they do that. For example, for their kids, if they come back home, they'll test the kids like, have you been drinking? But the thing is, what it's gonna say is that yes or no, if it's positive or not. So it doesn't
won't give
really
you the
measure
level.
the blood alcohol concentration. Unlike what we have here, it measures the actual blood, the BAC or the blood alcohol concentration.
So, you've gone through the 3 tests, and now
Now you move to the breath analyzer. Yeah.
How does this
well,
work?
first they have to know that this is what a breath analyzer look like.
Okay.
Something like this. So
Right.
it has a pipe. What's important is that before they get tested, they should make sure that this is a fresh tube, meaning it hasn't been used because it could have some
For
residues
hygiene
of
purposes.
hygiene purposes, and it could the results could be
that's
Can
right.
be, of course,
Residual.
inaccurate.
Yeah.
right inaccurate because it could
Yeah.
have tested someone who's really
But
positive.
this is good for our viewers. They
Yeah.
should know that
Yeah.
if you're going to get a breath test,
Yeah.
Ask for a new
make
one.
sure you get a
Yeah.
new one. You see
Sealed.
them open a new one.
Sealed and then opened in front of them. So okay.
Okay.
You'll blow in front of this.
All right.
Then
Made a sound.
okay, with the sound. There's several kinds of tests for this particular device. What they have is the passive test, which indicates yes or no if you've been drinking, and then the actual auto test, which measures the actual blood alcohol content. So,
Yeah.
all right, we'll just test it. All right. It has several components. We have a mobile keyboard here,
yeah.
so that
Okay.
the law enforcer can actually encode or input the details of the driver, like the name, address, and the license number, including including the apprehending officer,
And that
the date and
automatically
the time.
registers here? Or?
It registers here. It's all operated under Bluetooth, and then we have also a mobile printer so that you can immediately print out the results.
Okay.
All right. So we'll do the auto
So it's
test.
like the parking in Makati.
Something like that. Something like that. So when we test that, let's try to do this.
All right.
Parang si Rod, kinakabahan na eh. Have
No,
you been
I-
drinking, Rod?
No, well,
Alright,
but we have a party on Saturday, so I'm a little bit
Basically, the law
I'm a bit
enforcer will
concerned.
ask you to blow on this, simply like this.
This blow, okay.
And when it beeps like that, it will actually measure the blood alcohol concentration. Well, thankfully, mine is
Thanks,
zero.
yours is zero. Yeah.
Mine is zero.
Alright.
And then right there and then, you can print it. So that you can have a printout, both the driver, the law enforcer, and the LTO has a copy. Because we we have penalties for this. So
Yeah.
this should be admitted as evidence in
That
court.
will be evidence. So yeah, this is evidence. So what happens then if it's
There's a printout,
Oh, there you
no?
go.
Yeah.
So you get the point.
So,
All right.
Alright.
You can, and then can you ask for a copy?
Yes, definitely. We'll be printing out 3 copies every time we test drivers. So 1 for the driver, 1 for the law enforcer, 1 for fire.
So let's say you get 0.06, all right?
Well,
which
that's
is
above-
beyond-
that's above the
it's a
threshold.
positive. So what happens next?
Well, immediately after you've been proven above the threshold, they'll take you to the nearest police station for custody.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll take your car, they'll impound it until an authorized representative can claim it.
So you cannot
then that's it.
resist going to the
No,
precinct?
no.
And I think this is a time for us to clarify to our viewers. Under the previous law, you cannot just be apprehended for basically driving drunk, right? Like even if you had alcohol, if you didn't injure someone, if you don't
Yes.
basically
May-
run over a
yeah.
person or damage property by bumping into another car, then there's really no probable cause or really no reason to arrest you, right?
Yes, that's
Now, kahit nasabihin pa nila, wala naman akong kasalanan, wala akong nasagasaan, wala akong nabangga, if you prove to be positive
Right.
In other
with
words,
the breathalyzer.
you went to a no parking zone and you get caught or no left turn.
Yeah,
ka, for
any-
example, or any
any
violation.
traffic violation
or even
can
if
be a
you're not
probable cause.
violating, if you
you
look
just-
like you're
yeah.
drunk, you're
Yeah.
straddling 2 lanes, they can
Right.
stop you, and then if
Right.
you prove positive, you have to go to the police
And
station.
what
Right.
happens then if you go to the? So you get there's an information. There's a charge sheet.
Yeah, the charge sheet, and then
You could be
yeah,
charged
yeah.
right there and then.
Right there and then, and then they'll submit that to the fiscal's office, and then
For the
you'll get
proper,
right for it. Yeah.
for the proper, ano.
And Jason, I guess this is the time for us to discuss what are the penalties.
Well, it's kind of hard because basically, if you just get caught being under the influence of liquor, he'll be fined 20 to 80,000 pesos.
Very expensive.
Plus a
no?
jail term
That's an
of 3
expensive drink,
months.
no? That's an
That's
expensive
a
Is it
very
And or jail term.
no end.
And jail term.
And jail term 3 months plus
3 months?
3 months.
Wow.
Plus, if you're a private driver, for the first offense, we'll confiscate your license and suspend it for a year. For the second offense, we'll revoke it. But if you are a public utility driver, meaning you
drive a bus,
yeah,
a
bus,
jeep,
taxi,
oo.
first time we revoke.
You know,
Wow.
it's
That's
harsh.
really
It's
harsh,
harsh,
no?
but you know, I kind of agree with it. Because obviously,
Well, it has to
yeah,
be.
It has to be done.
It has to
be.
done. Yeah.
The idea here is
Yeah.
to strike fear.
Yeah.
Meaning you need to think twice, thrice
Yeah.
before
Before driving
driving.
drunk,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know. So the key is if you want to drink, you have to just stay
Yeah.
home, no?
Stay home or
And again, as
designated
Jason
driver.
emphasized, there's really no formula. You can't say, oh, I only have 2 beers and according
Yes.
to
Yeah.
Jason of the LTO na kaya pa yan. But no, because you never know how your body will
Exactly.
react to it,
Right.
right? It
Right.
might be
Right.
higher than points.
We have a number of questions.
Okay.
I'm sure it's a ton of questions from our viewers who are quite interested in this topic. Let's answer them with the help of Jason, of course, from the LTO. We start with Lawrence. Who has the authority to hail drivers when they are suspected of driving under the influence? Is it the MMDA or local police? What about cities like Makati, where the MMDA has no jurisdiction over it? Who then will enforce this law?
Oh, that's a very good question, Sir Rod. The LTO is the lead agency assigned by the law or by the DUI law itself to implement and conduct drug tests or alcohol tests on the road. But what we will do is we will also deputize agents from other law enforcement agencies like MMDA, the PNP, and LGUs in the provinces. But what we will do is field out composite teams, Meaning, in one mobile patrol who will implement the DUI law, there should be somebody from the LTO, from the MMDA, and from the PNP.
So that there's no connivance?
Yes,
There's no
for
collusion or
a
something?
lot of reasons. One, there should be check and balance.
All right,
They don't know each other because we will rotate that from time to time. Second, so that there would be no collusion, no familiarity. And third, so that they would be able to check if somebody's trying to do something.
Yeah. Because to be...
Kasi
Yeah.
one, I guess the danger would be you trying to bribe the
Exactly.
arresting officer or the person testing you.
Right.
Or baliktad naman,
Yeah.
if you're someone's trying to just pin you down,
Yeah.
they might also say that you were drunk, right?
Yes,
then
and also to prevent harassment from either camp. Because, in this case, harassment can go either way. Harassment from the law enforcer or harassment from the motorists themselves. You can just imagine, right, as we speak, like, you've seen traffic enforcers being berated, even being slapped by, angry motorists. You can just imagine if he's drunk, and then you flag him down at night, you can
that's
just imagine
true.
what
And
will
you try to
happen.
test
So they
him,
need somebody from the police as well, di ba?
It has to be a
MMDA lang.
has to be a committee talaga.
Yes, yes.
And yun nga, I agree with you. Kasi if the penalty is three months imprisonment and the minimum is 20,000 fine,
20 to 80,000,
what
yeah.
will stop you and say, pare, bigyan na lang kita 15,000.
Right.
15,000.
Right. Immediately, like,
Okay, di ba?
don't give me jail term. I'll give you even the 50,000, di ba?
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Well,
So-
di ba?
Yeah,
a
so-
lot of things can
so-
happen on the road.
So it's important to say it's a composite team.
It's a composite team.
So there are like 4 people there,
At least,
at least
right?
4 people from the LTO, from the local police, from the
Yeah.
MMDA, so that there's no collusion and
Right.
yun nga, if someone's gonna offer,
Yeah.
may at least
And
there
at the
are 4
same
of them.
time, they're protected from whatever might happen on the road. Because, this is gonna be done at night normally.
Yes.
And then you're gonna accost
drunk people,
Yeah.
drunk
potentially.
people,
yeah.
potentially drunk people who might have weapons with them. So it's
Yeah.
potentially dangerous
We
for
have
everybody.
more questions, and our next one is from Carl. What are the steps when a traffic officer stops a driver for suspected drunk driving? How can we be sure that the officer is following protocol and not violating the rights of the driver?
Yeah, we kind of
So
went
one
through it kanina.
definitely is to have at least 4 people.
Yep.
All of those.
That's
I
one.
mean,
And then we will make sure that all our mobile patrols will have dashboard cameras. Yeah.
okay.
To
So-
ensure, like what we see in the States, in the movies
Yeah.
and in the TV
Yeah.
shows, the apprehension should be done in front of the mobile patrol so that everything could be recorded and then everything will be transparent. And at the same time, we encourage people, because most of us have camera phones now. So if you see anyone being tested for DUI, then you just take a video of it so that everything will be
Yeah,
transparent.
and again, what he was asking, yung the process earlier, di ba? Yung the
Right,
first, the 3 sobriety tests that you mentioned.
And then the
And
then-
then if you fail those,
fail those-
but if you pass those, will they still conduct
no,
a breath?
no. If you
paano
pass the
kung two beers and then ang galing-galing mo pa rin mag-balance or whatever,
good
no?
for you.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so maybe a lot of people who like to drink will be practicing
Yeah.
the walk
But
and turn.
scientifically, it's not gonna
Yeah.
happen. Eh.
Yeah,
If you
that's
have
true.
something, if you had something, it's not gonna happen. You're
limbo,
definitely gonna fail.
limburak lang talo ka na eh. Di ba? Di ba? So, all right, so, we have a question from Josh. Josh is asking, tests for drunk driving are commonly known, but how will the officers conduct the drug tests to prove probable cause that the driver was driving under the influence of drugs? I think you kind of touched on that already.
Yeah, but it's a bit harder. It's a bit harder than just because when you had alcohol, you get the smell, you get the eyes, but not all dangerous drugs manifest in
Right.
the driver.
Actually, some types of dangerous drugs are actually known to enhance alertness,
Yes,
right?
especially amphetamines, right? That's why the law enforcers or the deputized agents will be trained seriously to have drug recognition protocol, so that they would know, like, just for the eyes, the way they talk, the way they look. So it's very important. But if they do detect that you're possibly under the influence of drugs, what they can do is take you to the nearest police precinct to conduct drug tests.
And that would include, I guess, other types of tests, which we'll
Yes.
ask you about after our break. We still have more to discuss with our guest, Jason. Legal Help Desk will return, so stay tuned. You're You're still tuned in to Legal Help Desk on the Solar News Channel with our guest, Jason Salvador of the LTO.
Okay, so let's talk about penalties now. And in fact, I understand the LTO is releasing a lot of penalties now, not just in drunk driving, but also in
that's
other
actually the hot topic
violations
right now. By June 19, a few weeks back, we released the new revised schedules of fines and penalties. Just to give you a glimpse, the gist of the new fines and penalties will make colorum offenses a 1 million thing.
That's what I heard, yes.
From a
1 million
6,000
pesos.
penalty to a 1 million
So the
pesos
schedule of
fine.
penalties includes
Everything.
including the
Including that,
alcohol, the drunk
including as
So
simple as
if you have a driver, if I'm the operator, for instance, of a bus company, and then one of my drivers is caught driving drunk, apart from him having his penalties under the law of fines and then imprisonment, I can also be penalized under this colorum.
Right. Aside from colorum, but if basically you're an operator of a public utility vehicle and your driver is caught under the influence, you share responsibility. You share the penalties unless you can prove to the court that you have exerted extraordinary diligence in
Making sure that they don't get to drink and drive.
Right.
So
what are the penalties under this colorum? Basically, this new issuance coming out on June 19th.
Basically, it just it increased a lot. It increased a lot. Like the basic penalties like disregarding traffic sign, from somewhere between 200 to 300 to 1,000. But the main gist of the revised schedule is really the franchise violations, like the out of line, the colorum, because before it was just 6,000, now it's up to 1 million. So it's really, really big.
Wow.
Really big.
Now,
you have to watch out.
You definitely have to watch out. Now, are there other penalties? Can we go through the penalties again insofar as drunk driving and being caught under the influence
we
of
talked
drugs?
about for the driver,
Yeah.
if you're a private driver, then 20 to 80,000 plus jail time of 3 months. And then for the first offense, 1 year suspension, second offense,
Revocation.
lifetime revocation.
Yes.
Lifetime,
Lifetime.
So wala ka na license
But
forever.
that's-
But
the-
for
sorry.
public transport drivers, it's the first time violation, your
Permanent,
license is
permanent
revoked.
revocation,
Yes.
which is so mabigat yun.
Yeah,
Kasi
if
that's your profession,
Yeah.
diba?
Yes,
You
but
can't-
for operators of a taxi company or a bus company, if your driver gets caught, are there penalties?
You'll share
for
in the penalties.
You mean you share the payment of the fines?
Yes, but he will be the one who will do the jail term. the
Okay, what
driver.
about the permit or the franchise
or the
of
Well,
the
yeah,
operator?
that could affect the franchise of the operator. But what's important here is that that's just the simple being under the influence. If you're caught or if you are involved in an accident, meaning somebody gets injured or hurt, then the fine increases from 20 to 80,000 to 100 to 200.
Wow, if someone dies, what if someone dies?
Well, 300 to 500.
And what is the jail time?
Oh, it depends upon what is prescribed in the revised penal code.
Okay.
Yeah, so on top of that,
On top
that
pa,
it
without
will-
prejudice to what will be imposed.
Okay, so you can be charged both under this law and the revised penal code.
Revised penal code. So it's
And
really
I guess
bigat,
also
yeah.
civil code. If there are damages, right?
Definitely,
If you,
definitely.
Kahit property lang yung masira
Yeah, again,
mo,
without
you
any
have to-
prejudice to whatever other laws.
Now, can you appeal this? Kunyari, not for anything, but let's say I got caught 0.06. I'm not applying it for myself, but let's say 0.06. I got, and it was my second time, and permanently revoked my yung license ko.
Well, I guess-
Is that something that can be appealed?
I
sa
guess,
LTO?
I guess nothing is really, explicit
Not,
here.
no one got hurt.
Yes, but it's up to the courts to decide. It's up to the courts.
Because it is a major
think they
thing.
can.
In
I
fact,
think
that
they
you-
can, of
Because
course.
effectively you can't drive anymore. You know,
Yes.
the moment your drive. Your
The problem
license
is if
revoked.
you are a public utility driver, and this is your main means of livelihood, and then it's going to be taken out of you, then it's
yeah.
going to be tough.
All right. All right. Let's continue answering questions from our viewers. Jerome posted on Facebook, are the enforcers allowed to confiscate my driver's license even if I've yet to undergo the sobriety test?
They will not confiscate your license, but they have the right to check your license and your registration.
Okay. So
If it's valid, if it,
All right.
they can check.
they can check. Okay, but they can't confiscate.
No.
All right.
And even at the point na you tested positive for alcohol, can they then confiscate?
Yes, they will confiscate
so after
your license.
na lang.
After.
Okay. So I hope that's clear. We have another question from Ray. How can we report incidences of drunk driving and to whom?
Well, we'll be establishing hotlines of course. But basically, you need to inform people or patrols on the streets so that they can flag these people down. We want to be proactive as much as possible to prevent further damages and accidents. So we will, of course, welcome that.
So, if, for instance, if you see someone, I'm not sure if you'll do this to a friend, driving away, kahit alam mo marami na ininom, we can give, technically call to...
But you can, if you want to save his life.
That's true.
Because he can be involved in a serious accident. So if you're concerned about your friend, either you tell him that you'd be driving, or you let us know.
That's true, that's true. All right, well, Jamie asked, and I think this is an interesting question. What will happen if I refuse to undergo the mandatory tests? The sobriety test and...
immediately we'll revoke your license.
Immediately, okay.
Plus, again, other penalties can be imposed on you depending on what laws are applicable. But basically, we'll revoke it for life. If you...
For life?
For life. We'll
Wow,
revoke it.
that's a very tough penalty.
Basically, you're letting go of your right to get tested. So, parang inamin mo na.
Oo. So very important to the viewers out there. You cannot refuse to take the test, the
If you're
sobriety
confident that
test,
you can pass,
or
then-
else you risk losing your license forever.
Just curiously, is the LTO, obviously, this is kind of a change of, I guess, lifestyle for a lot of people. I mean, they got so used to it. And don't get me wrong, I totally agree with it. But does the LTO have, let's say, a program to help people out? Let's say, call a cab and those kind of more, not legal, but more practical solutions for
you'll
people.
be surprised. Actually, we've been getting a lot of increase if they can establish a limousine service type of business or drive me home type of business. Like in other countries, they had like party vans, for example, that can take you to and from your parties. So we've got a lot of inquiries for
of
that.
that.
Yeah.
So LTO might
I think that can work.
consider.
That can work.
Okay, but for now, wala pa. So just don't drink if you plan to be driving or if you have to travel far.
Okay.
We have another question from Lito from Twitter. How can we as drivers and citizens prevent traffic enforcers to use this law as another way of abusing their powers to get money from us? I think ito yung situation kanina na ina-address din ng apat na...
Yes, that's one. And
Yeah.
the dashboard cams is another. Plus, again, we encourage you to take videos, to take pictures. And basically, just don't disobey the traffic rules. So that
Just be a good citizen, right?
Yeah.
All right. Now from Twitter, Faye asks, can a driver whose license was revoked file for an appeal? Ito, to have the license back or to file for a new one?
Well,
you answered
I guess.
case to case,
so,
I guess.
but that's case-to-case basis. I guess you need to undergo a process. But it's difficult because the law expressly says that we will revoke your license.
Now, here's the thing. Obviously, you have a lot of ground to cover, di ba? And these breathalyzers, I would imagine they're not cheap.
Yes.
So will you have enough to cover the whole country, and how many units will you have?
Initially, we're planning to buy 150 units for 150 teams. But once we get additional funding, then we plan to buy more, as much as we need.
And this will cover just NCR?
No, all over the country.
So simultaneous, sabay-sabay
Yes,
na.
ma'am.
Okay. We have another question posted on Facebook from Mitch. I recently bought a car and my nephew drove it while under the influence of alcohol. He was caught and was tested positive for alcohol substance. Do the police have the authority to impound my car even if I am the vehicle's owner? This is complicated kasi may ibang gumamit na drinking and driving.
Well,
pa pala.
initially, if it was the vehicle used being under the influence, they can immediately impound it. But again, as I mentioned earlier, it can be received by an authorized representative. So they're not going to impound it for a long time.
I see. Now, for a lot of people are also asking, in renewing my license, because there was already a law that kind of removed that, the mandatory checking, di ba? The checking of drugs and alcohol. Is that because of this law? They're fearful that they might require that again and take longer to...
No, in fact, on the contrary, the law expressly repealed the drug testing prior to renewal or application of driver's license. But LTO is allowed to do random drug tests for public utility drivers in their garages and in their terminals.
So the LTO is going
Drug
to conduct
test.
that?
Yes, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do random drug testing for public utility drivers.
Okay, and for public utility drivers, they cannot refuse to undergo the
Yes.
random drug test.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so again, another thing that a lot of even utility owners, public
Yes.
vehicle, yung franchisees should
Yeah.
take note of.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, a quick
And-
question lang, no? I mean, some of our televiewers saw this, saw your equipment. This is the official equipment. What if sometime in July, they get stopped, and then some police from the LGU made them breathe into something that doesn't look like that?
Well, basically, it should look something like this with the right components. But again, if we have the actual devices,
So can I refuse? I'll say, that's not what I saw in LegalHD.
Yeah.
Right?
well, if
Yeah.
this is not the actual thing that we will be using because it's still up for bidding, but something that resembles this one.
Because the LGUs might, have their own law enforcement,
But they need to be deputized by us first, so they'll follow our lead. So if
All right.
whatever equipments we use, then I think they will follow.
So in that regard, I can refuse.
No.
I can refuse the test. Let's say they're forcing me to breathe into something that.
Well, if they are
Doesn't
the
look
actual deputized enforcers and they are with the composite teams, no, they can't because that means that's official.
Okay. And again, another note siguro to our viewers, like what Jason mentioned, make sure that when they're conducting the test, they open a new
Yes.
for you just to make sure na hindi siya tampered with, and pangalawa, hindi nagamit ng previous
Yes,
test
because
that
this is
might
important.
be inaccurate, right? That
Yeah,
has
because
already alcohol.
may residual alcohol or something like that. And of course, for basic hygiene, they should make sure that this is sealed before they are asked to.
Yeah.
And then I have another question. Since this law requires basically drivers to follow new rules, like you can't even drink regardless if you don't get into an accident, is this going to be part of the test that you take when applying for a license and basically for those who are from abroad and then taking the test for the
Yes,
first time?
actually, that's a very good question, Ma'am Karen. It will be included in the theoretical exams when you're applying for a driver's license because you're supposed to know what are the effects of alcohol if you're going to drive and then what are the thresholds. So this will be included. And but they
Like a
will
seminar?
Be
It's gonna be a seminar?
Yeah, there will be a seminar. Part of the law says that the LTO needs to inform people, not just for the first month, but perpetually, so that they would be informed accordingly. So this will be part of the seminar, the exams.
All right.
Okay, last question. What about underage drivers? Kung wala ka pang license, tas nahuli ka pang
Oh,
drinking
that,
while
that
driving.
aggravates
Are you
everything.
gonna be now disqualified to apply
Yes,
for a
I
license?
guess, because for one, you're not even qualified to drive, and then you're drinking, so it aggravates everything. But of course, you're
It's,
gonna get
it's
the
in
jail
the
term.
rules that you cannot apply for a license anymore?
Not yet, but I guess if you would sum it all up, you're not even allowed to drive, and that you're violating everything. Then I guess that bars you from even. But of course, this is appealable. But I think, personally, I think that would bar you from applying immediately for a driver's license. Maybe later on.
All right. I think it's a fantastic law, and I will drink to that. But not non-alcoholic. Non-alcoholic beverage.
But thank
Yeah.
you so much,
Yeah.
Jason. Very informative, and especially about, for the viewers, what they should be expecting in terms of tests and what types of penalties. Thank you so
thank you
much.
so much,
And
Jason.
good luck
Yeah.
enforcing this law.
Thank you. We will need it.
Yes, and I'm sure it will save a lot of
Be
lives.
seeing you on the road.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
Okay. We'd like to thank our guest, Jason Salvador, spokesperson for the LTO, for being with us tonight. Legal Help Desk will return after this commercial break. Welcome back to Legal Help Desk on the Solar News Channel.
Right,
And
that
today
was-
with a very
Yeah.
informative, interesting topic.
I like that. I like that topic. And that, I mean, of course, obviously, it's illegal, but it's also, I think it's also part of safety. It's a kind of a
We
safety
should have
reminder.
had, kasi ang dami talagang statistics on how many deaths caused each year from
Yeah.
traffic, from basically car accidents. And
know.
one thing that we have to clarify to our viewers, prior to Republic Act 10586, we had no law which prohibited drunk or drug driving. Basically, you only get penalized or you go to prison or get fines if you drove and got into an accident, meaning You were drunk and then you got into an accident, you either injured or killed someone or damaged property, then driving drunk is also an aggravating circumstance. If you actually got drunk to commit the crime or whatever. But then basically, this law makes it illegal to drink or take drugs and then drive, regardless if you don't bump into another car, don't damage property, or kahit wala kang, if you don't run into another person, wala kang nabundol.
In other words, if you get caught, if you're at the checkpoint, they see that there's an indication that you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol. If they have that suspicion, they're gonna go through the three tests. All right. The first one is they're gonna make the horizontal test, horizontal light. They'll put in front of your eyes, and your eyes should be able to follow that. Next, it'll be the walk and turn, 9 steps. And then the third one is they'll let you raise your 1 foot above the ground, around 6 inches, and you have to stand for 60 seconds. So if you fail any of those, they will then let you blow into their breathalyzer, their breath analyzer. And if that breath analyzer shows you have at least a 0.05% alcohol content in your blood, then they will arrest you.
Yeah,
right?
they can take you to the nearest police station, and you cannot resist going to the police station. You have to comply with that. And then also they can, right then and there, also confiscate your license and impound the vehicle. So be careful. And if you're a public vehicle driver, meaning you operate taxis, public transportation like buses, the tolerance is 0.00, meaning you cannot have any alcohol content in your blood. Kahit 0.01 pa yan, you can get arrested. And the fines are very
stiff, yeah.
Yeah, steep in the sense that a minimum of 20,000 to 80,000 for the first offense, plus a jail time of 3 months.
And if someone gets hurt or someone gets killed, it could go as high as 500,000 pesos your fine.
Yeah.
So
on top of your penalties under the existing laws. And also, suspension of your driver's license for at least 1 year. On the second offense, your license gets revoked forever, meaning lifetime revocation.
Oh, if your license is a professional driver's license, it's automatic. There's not even a second chance.
Yeah,
so
meaning
non-pro
first
lang.
offense pa lang.
Non-pro lang yung may second chance, no? But if you're a pro, your license gets revoked immediately. So if you're let's say a jeepney driver or a taxi driver, think twice, no? Kasi if you get caught, that's it. You can't practice your profession anymore. It's going to be really tough. All right? Okay, so that's the recap for 10586, the Anti-Drug and Drunk Driving Act. Now, over the week, we received questions from viewers on social media, and Irene asked, "My husband left us for another woman, and he wants to file for an annulment using his infidelity as a reason. Can he do this? I don't want an annulment. I still want our family intact."
Swerte naman ng lalaki. Siya na ngayon ng babae. Siya pa yung gagamitin niya pang ground yun.
Yan ang having your cake and eat it too. No?
Yes. So, just to clarify, Irene, your husband cannot file for annulment based on this ground. 1, infidelity is not a ground for annulment. Only psychological incapacity is a ground for annulment, absent any other circumstances that would make your marriage void. Like for instance, kung isa sa inyo under 18 or void or wala kayong marriage license when you got married, that will also make the marriage void. But otherwise, if it's a valid marriage, only psychological incapacity.
Yeah.
But his infidelity can be a ground for legal separation. But you're the one who has the right to file for it because he is the guilty spouse. So your husband cannot escape his obligations from the marriage through his infidelity. And if he lives in with this woman, then you can file for concubinage. That's a crime. So, yun.
You're the one who has otherwise, then all they need to do is just be unfaithful to their wives, and then they can go through annulment, diba? Using the logic of that husband.
Yeah.
So, no, it can't be. All right.
And we have another question from Marie. Can a marriage be void for not attending the seminar on marriage licenses?
No.
Okay, it depends, no? So, if your marriage license was issued, then it's a valid marriage license regardless if you failed to comply with, for instance, a seminar. So if for instance, you don't attend the seminar and it's one of the requirements, then you don't get a marriage license. And that would make the marriage void pagka wala kang issued marriage license. But if this was issued, then it's just an irregularity in complying with the requirements. Basta meron namang marriage license, then the marriage is valid.
So the license is the one important, not really the seminar. So if you have the license, there should be no problem. All right? I hope that's the answer that you wanted. So, all right.
Baka disappointed
right, baka
siya,
disappointed ka,
yeah.
no? All right, there's a question from Neil. Neil posted, my ex-wife and I were separated for 7 years, and she filed for abandonment. Is that possible if one of our children is with me since we separated?
Okay.
Okay, it's a little tricky question.
Yeah, tricky question because there's no hard and fast rule on abandonment. Like we cannot say na just because hindi kayo nagkita for 7 years, ay may abandonment na. Because abandonment, apart from the period of time, is really based on the circumstances surrounding it. Meaning, if one of the spouses has stopped supporting, hindi na nagpapakita, wala nang participation in the marriage, and completely absent, then you can argue that there's abandonment. But if, for instance, one of your children is still with you and you still support your family, then you can argue that there's really no abandonment.
Yeah.
Because 7 years, some OFWs, for instance, 10 years nang hindi nagkikita, hindi magkasama. But if they can show that they've been supporting the family, there's no abandonment there.
I guess you should make an effort to look for him, and if you make an effort to look for him, you can actually find him. I don't think there's real abandonment. But when he's really missing and he's totally left you, then there could be a case for abandonment. No? So I guess it would depend on the situation. So that's the best way we can answer that.
Okay, we have another question from Risa. My husband and I have been separated for 9 years. He already has a new family. He hasn't supported our 15-year-old since he left us. Because of our financial situation, I cannot afford to shoulder the legal fees. Do I still need to file for an annulment or can our marriage be considered as null and void? Nako. Again, yung mga ganitong situations, regardless of the fact na ilang years na kayong magkahiwalay, it's not automatic that your marriage can be annulled or that it's suddenly null and void. So one, your husband is still married to you unless he filed for an annulment before, but obviously hindi pa. So this new family of his is actually a ground to file a criminal case of concubinage against him, because with a new family, then if they're living together, that's one of the elements for concubinage, cohabitation. But if they're not living together, then maybe you cannot file for concubinage, but still you have several options. One, you can file for legal separation based on his infidelity. Obviously, may new family. But also, you can demand support. So, under the family code, you can file a complaint for support, but also under the Violence Against Women and Their Children, or VAUSI law, this is considered as financial abuse. So, you can go to your barangay to get a barangay protection order or a court temporary protection order to get support from your husband for your child. And wag kang mamroblema sa legal fees, because if he's the guilty spouse, you can also ask for payment of legal fees. But again, yung tinatanong niya, can we then use this as a ground for annulment? Not necessarily.
Separation, separation, or if one party is living already with another party, is not a ground for annulment, no matter how long. So that's just, well, for a lot of people, unfortunately, that's a sad truth. But the law is the law. So unless although there is a bill, but we don't know if it's going to push through. But there is a bill that proposes that 5 years of separation is a ground for annulment. But that is only a bill. So we'll have to see if that will push through. All right, that's all the time that we have for tonight. If you have any questions or comments on tonight's episode, share them with us on our Facebook and Twitter pages. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. If you missed any of our previous episodes, you may watch these at your convenience by simply downloading the Solar News Channel app on your mobile devices from Google Play and the Apple App Store. Join us again next Monday as we discuss your legal rights. Good night.